All right, so this model is good for two structures, oropharynx and esophagus. Oro means mouth. I can orient myself by finding the teeth. I move straight back. This hollow area in the back of your throat is the oropharynx, and it is an area. So I'll put a piece of tape across, and I'll ask you to identify the area. If I swallow, the food comes down. It stays in this smaller tube here. This is the esophagus, which is deep to the trachea. Trachea has those large cartilage rings keeping it nice and open and round. The esophagus can be squished down. If we move to the stomach is a J shape. This is the esophagus coming in. This is where the small intestine is leaving. Where the esophagus joins in on the outside, we call that the cardia. Bless you. A portion of the stomach that sits a little bit higher than that junction is the fundus. The majority of the stomach is the body. This last J shape that's going up is the pylorus. When we look at the inside of the stomach, we can see some structures. Where the esophagus joins is called the lower esophageal sphincter. Where the small intestine is leaving, that's called the pyloric sphincter. All these ridges are called rugae. And then there are two curvatures of the stomach. The lower, larger one is called the greater curvature. The smaller, higher one, or more superior, is called the lesser curvature. This is the liver. The liver has two lobes. The larger right lobe, the smaller left lobe. There's a line dividing them. That's called the falciform ligament. If I follow the falciform ligament down, it turns into a white line. That's the round ligament. The right lobe is so large, it's got two other lobes. Quadrate, which is a four-sided, square-looking lobe in between the round ligament and the gallbladder. That's the quadrate. And the caudate, which is a elongated oval lobe right next to this large blue vessel, which is the inferior vena cava. So caudate, quadrate, right lobe, left lobe, falciform ligament, round ligament. Which I'm touching is the white line. Also under here, we have this green pear-shaped sac. That's your gallbladder. The gallbladder has a duct connected to it called the cystic duct. And the cystic duct joins up with a couple of other green tubes until it exits the liver at the common bile duct. But where I'm most likely to ask the common bile duct is on this model. This green line running next to the pancreas is the common bile duct coming down to the small intestine. Look at liver, make sure I got it all. Okay. So on the front, we see this spongy pink tissue. That's your pancreas. Running down the middle is a white line towards the small intestine. That's called the pancreatic duct. The common bile duct and the pancreatic duct open up into this first part of the small intestine, which is C-shaped. It's called the duodenum or duodenum or duodenum. And that hooks up to this top portion here, the jejunum, which hooks into the lower portion, the ileum. Now, we can see the intestines on one side. The other side is covered by the greater omentum, which is a piece of fatty tissue that's coming down from the greater curvature of the stomach. Jejunum, ileum. This is the ileocecal junction, where the last part of the small intestine, the ileum, is joining up with the first part of the large intestine, the cecum. The cecum is this swirly part, looks like its own pouch on the large intestine. If I turn it over and look on the back of the cecum, I see this tail-like structure called the appendix. And then the cecum gives rise to the colon. The colon is the longest part of the large intestine. It's all this gray tube. When the food goes up, it's the ascending. It cuts across, it's called the transverse. It comes down, it's called the descending. And for the last part, it takes on this S shape. That's the sigmoid colon. And then you have to get one of the reproductive models to see the very last part, which is the rectum. It sits behind the bladder closest to sacrum, or the tailbone, and coccyx back there. Okay?
Yes.